and welcome to the Art of Being Human. We've all had times when we've met people that seem to be very cynical. Nothing's right, nothing's going to be right, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, I'll never get dates, I'll never get good jobs, my interviews aren't good, I'll never pass my courses. Sometimes the cynicism is based on situations that a person is in, but a lot of times it's directed at themselves. I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, I don't have enough rights to do what I want to do, I'm just not smart, and on and on and on it goes. Well, this is the kind of feeling tone that people have when they're doing what we call disordered thoughts. And I started that segment last time where we talked about the way that people think when they're under too much stress and when they don't think of themselves as being good people and they let the stresses of their everyday life get to them. And we went through part of these thoughts. Now, I brought in a book that was called Feeling Good, and it's an attempt by a psychiatrist to show you that if you change your thought patterns, you can get past this negativity that you're feeling. You can get past the cynicism as long as you change your thought patterns. And I also explained that you can't feel your way to change, but you can act your way to change. So there is a lot of truth in that. I explained that. But I think there's more to it than that, and I also said that I would want to know if I was counseling a person, what made them so negative to begin with? Is it something that's going on in their biology? Are their brain chemicals not responding properly? Are things out of balance? Are their hormones out of balance? Or is it stress and strain in their everyday life that's getting to them? Because you can have depression that's exogenous, caused by an outside situation, such as a job situation, a bad marriage, whatever your personal life is that's not good. Or you can have an endogenous depression that's due to the fact that something's wrong internally. Your body is not in balance, so it's a biochemical problem. So with that in mind, I want to review a little bit of what I did last time. We took up 4 of the different types of thought patterns that people who are negative and cynical have, and the book calls them distortion or cognitive distortions. In other words, they're not thinking in a good, clear way. I want to review just quickly what we went over and then go on with that. There are 10 of those cognitive distortions discussed in that book, Feeling Good, and I want to get possibly to the rest of them in this segment. So you'll have a full scope of understanding exactly what it is that a person is feeling and thinking when they're not doing well. So let me go first off to the first 4. We did the first 4. I'll do a quick review of them. The all or nothing thinking, and we're all guilty of this to a certain degree, but people who are cynical and people who are negative take all of these things to the extreme. So I will, as I am describing them, seem to take them to the extreme. But if you are caught in a negative thought pattern, you'll be able to identify with this because you'll say, that's exactly what I do. So even though I may be exaggerating, people who have these negative thoughts do exaggerate. Okay, the first one was all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking. Everything's good or bad. I'm healthy or I'm sick. I have value or I don't. There's nothing in between. I'll be a success or a failure. I'll do well or I don't. You know, there's no in between. There's no shades of gray. Everything's black, everything is white. So it's called all or nothing thinking, or it's called black and white thinking. This is not right because there's tons of things in between black and white. There are tons of shades of gray. And you need to remember that nothing is always bad. Nothing is always good, but there's lots of gradations in between. I'm normally happy, but sometimes I'm not happy, but usually I'm happy. Okay, that's a shade of gray. That would be what most people would think. So that would be the all or nothing thinking, which we discussed last time. The overgeneralization, if something happens, it's going to repeat itself, especially if it's negative. So if something negative happens, it will repeat itself over and over again. I took a course, I flunked it. I'm gonna flunk it again if I take it again. I tried to get a job, I didn't get it. I'm not gonna get any jobs. It's a little bit like all or nothing thinking, but you're honing in on a specific thing. I can't do well on tests. I'll never do well on tests. And everything that you do is to bring up the negative on that. So that's overgeneralization. It will repeat itself. It's like always waiting for that second shoe to drop. If it happened once and it's bad, it's going to continue to happen and be bad. There's no escape. You see, that's not a healthy way to think. Not a healthy way to think at all. The mental filter. Picking out a negative detail in a situation and dwelling on that negative detail. I ran a race, I fell. I got up, I continued to run the race, and I finished the race. But all I can think about is I fell. I made a mistake. So that becomes the preeminent thing that I'm thinking about, not the fact that I stood up, not the fact that I actually finished the race. And even if I fell, I injured my ankle, I still get up and ran the race. I still completed it. Well, that's something to be proud of. It's not something to look at with disdain. What I started to do, I finished. I may not have finished in the first 5, but I finished. But what you do with the mental filter is that you see that negative detail, and that's all you think about, and you dwell on that negative. And I know people who do this. Something happens, some little thing, they should be able to get over it and move on, and they never do. They have a relation with somebody they care about, it gets broken off somehow. Do they move ahead? No. All they think about is what went wrong in the relationship. They cannot let it go. So they just ruminate about it and they think about it. It's over and over and over again. It occupies their thoughts. The problem is it's paralyzing. You get nothing done if all you do is think about a negative thing that's happened to you. Okay, and the next one, disqualifying the positive. You turn a positive experience into a negative one. For example, somebody gives you a compliment and they mean it, and you think, well, they're just being nice. Somebody tells you you did a good job in the solo, and you think, well, I missed a note. You know, it wasn't that good. Now, if you're in competition, a mistake can be important if you're in a competition. You know, if you're in a piano competition or a woodwinds competition, a mistake might make the difference as to whether you get first prize or you don't. But in ordinary, everyday life, we're not in a competition, but we act like we are. I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to buy something. It had better be the best, or I won't buy anything at all. If I don't get something that's exactly the right color, I won't get anything at all. It's all negative, negative, negative. And that's what people who are cynical do. It's all negative. And it's too bad because they miss a lot of the pleasure of life. They miss congratulating themselves when they've done something well, or even if they haven't done it perfectly, they've done a standout job. So therefore, it would be wise for you to stop thinking this way. And when I finish this section, I'm going to go into emotions and how they feel and what you can do. We'll do a special segment, and we'll probably take several segments on handling human emotions, how to handle them, and how to make changes. Right now, I just want to discuss them, define them. This is where they are. This is what they are. Now, if you define your emotions, you're going to feel better anyway. If you get up and you just don't feel good, you just don't feel right, and if you can admit to that, if you can talk about it, if you can acknowledge it, even if it's just acknowledging it to yourself, it loses some of the sting of it, and therefore it becomes easier to handle. Now we're doing the 5th one. This is where we're starting. Jumping to conclusions. You make negative assumptions that are not based on fact. Something happens and you make negative assumptions. For example, I had a student when I was teaching, on some of my teaching years, I spent 4 years teaching high school. And I introduced a psychology class because that's my specialty, one of my specialties, and the students loved the class. And I had one student in there who would always fall asleep. And I asked him about it. It didn't make me angry, but I asked him about it. Why are you falling asleep in my class? Is it boring you? Is this something I'm not doing that I should be doing? I was always up and open to suggestions that a student would have. And he says, I don't know why I'm falling asleep. I really like this class. Now, when you are teaching people and when you get to know your students, you know who's telling the truth and who's not. And I just felt he was telling the truth. I just felt it was out of his control. He would just doze off. So I talked to his mother. I called his mother, and I says, I think he should be medically checked. He keeps falling asleep in my class, but he also says that he likes the class, and I'm wondering if there is something medically wrong. And she said, you know, he's doing that at home too. He gets up, he's all excited about going to school, he has breakfast, and the next thing I know, he's asleep at the table. He cannot stay awake. Well, obviously something's wrong. No student, no healthy person would be doing that. And so she took him to the doctor, and he had some kind of a blood disorder, and he had to be treated for it. And when that was brought back into balance, he was fine. He never fell asleep again. Now, if I was jumping to conclusions, I would say this student is telling me that he likes my class. He really doesn't. He's just sitting there, and he's trying to be polite, and it's just too much for him, and he's falling asleep. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like the class. He thinks the class is worthless. And if I were to exaggerate that, and a person who is using this mechanism would exaggerate that, you would go on and on and on. Why doesn't he like me? Maybe I'm a lousy teacher. Maybe none of the students like me. And you can see where this goes. It just goes on forever. But I trusted him. When he said he liked the class, I trusted him. And I could tell the way he acted that he did like it, that he did want to become a participant in the class. So by finding out that he had a medical problem and being treated for it, that just took care of it. So you have to realize that when you're jumping to conclusions, you're taking something that's negative, you're overblowing it, and you're assuming the worst when it may not be the worst. You just expect awful things, and you just don't expect anything good to happen. And so this would be jumping to conclusions. I'm going to move this now, and well, maybe I should put this over here. We'll get to the sixth one. There are 10 of these. The sixth one, magnification or minimization. This is when you blow things out of proportion, and it's a lot like some of the others that we've discussed. But in this, you just blow things up out of proportion, and what you do is you magnify your errors and you diminish your strengths. So if you did something that was wonderful, but there was just a little element in it that wasn't exactly what you wanted, that's what you're going to think about. You're going to magnify your errors. You went in for some kind of a contest and you did well with the contest. You didn't get top prize, but you did well with the contest because there's just one little flaw that you noticed, and now it's like nothing counts. None of the good things that you did counted because you had that one little flaw. Now, I remember last segment talking about a skater in the Olympics. The skater is doing figure skating. It's very difficult to do. She's spinning, she's jumping, or he or she is, and she double foots or he double foots a jump, and he gets a little bit off a perfect score because of it. But basically, he still won a prize, or she still won a prize. She still had some kind of a reward for doing well. But all they think about is that one little thing they did wrong, magnifying your errors. If only I hadn't done that. If only I hadn't said that. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you think you've said something that's been upsetting or rude to somebody, all you can think about is what you said that was rude. At the time when you said it, you didn't think of it as being rude. Now that you think back, you say, oh, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why did I remind him of that? And a lot of times you'll go and be in a relationship, or you'll talk to somebody, you're involved with something, and you go past it. And then you think later on, oh, why did I do it? You're like reviewing what you said to a person or what you did with a person, and then you're all upset because you think you did wrong. Now, I can tell you that a person who you think you offended isn't even thinking about it. They're going on with their day. But because you think you made this horrific error, all you do is ruminate about it and think and think and think and think about that. And it can destroy you because it just ruins your whole day. Okay, emotional reasoning. You believe your emotions, but you're not seeing the truth. All of us have a little bit of a problem with this. If we're feeling a certain way, then we assume we are that way. If I wake up and I'm tired, then I'm thinking I'll never do anything right because I'm tired. Why do I think I can do the things I do? I'm always too tired. And you just see yourself through whatever it is that you're suffering from. By the end of the day, you're feeling fine. You're not tired anymore. And so therefore, you have taken a small negative thing and you have just increased it to the point where all you can think about is what it is that you're doing wrong. So that's your emotional reasoning. You believe your emotions, you're not seeing the truth. Supposing that you are 25 pounds overweight, supposing you lose 25 pounds, supposing you put 2 pounds back on so that it's 23 pounds that you've lost after the 2 have been put back on. All you can think about is those lousy 2 pounds. Why did I put it on? Why did I have the ice cream that I had? You know, it's just, I can't do anything right. And it goes back to that total negative thing again. Instead of realizing, you know, I'm still 23 pounds lighter than I was. So you don't let some kind of a small thing destroy you. To you it may seem very, very large. This is why we magnify it. It may seem very, very large, but the truth is, most people are not even going to be thinking about what you think is negative. It doesn't cross their minds. They don't think about it. You do a solo, you miss 2 or 3 notes. Do you think anyone's going to be thinking about that for the rest of the day? They're not. They're going on with their day. You're thinking about it. Why did I make those mistakes? It was not a perfect solo. No one else is thinking about it but you. So you have to realize that some of this negativity can become a little bit selfish in the sense that you're rehearsing it and rehearsing it and rehearsing it in your mind. And it doesn't need to be rehearsed in your mind because nobody else is thinking about it. Okay, so you believe your emotions. You're not seeing the truth. And we all believe our emotions to a certain degree. One of the problems that comes up with mental illness, with anxiety and depression, is that you relive your past emotions and you bring your past emotions to the present. You relive them and they take on a life of their own. And you believe that's the reality. So you let your past emotions and your past pain and your past problems become your present reality. When you should be able to let it go, it's not your present reality, and you don't have to believe that it is or act like it is. And if you were to tell somebody about it, they'd say, well, this happened 25 years ago. Why are you still worried about it now? Any problem that is not resolved tends to come up to haunt you in later years, but you have a tendency to dwell so much on the negative that it becomes a real life to you, and that's not right. You shouldn't do that. Should statements. You motivate yourself with should. I should do this, I must do that. It's a case of you put yourself in bondage because I must do it, I must do it, I must do it, I should do it. You go to a doctor, the doctor was late because they had an emergency. He should have been on time. I have a schedule. He should have been on time. I have time for this story, then we'll have to close and I'll finish with this next time. But one of my friends who went to a doctor and he was quite late and she was going to have an exam and she was wearing one of those gowns and she waited for him and she waited for him and he didn't come for quite a while. Finally she says, oh, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. She got dressed. And she left the office and she went past the reception area and we'll see you next year. And they said, wait a minute, he hasn't even been in to see you. She says, I know, but I've got a schedule too. We'll see you next year. And she walked out. You know, so sometimes we're not even reasonable. He should have been on time, but he wasn't on time. He had an emergency, something happened. When we do it to ourselves, we'll say things like, I should have been a better person. I should have done a better job. I must get an A on that test. It's not I should. I have to get an A on that test. I have to be the best person I can be. And you put yourself in bondage. You do not allow yourself to be a human being. Human beings have good times, they have bad times, but we're human. We aren't going to be perfect. You need to have patience with yourself. Labeling and mislabeling. I think I don't really have time to go into this, so we'll do 9 and 10 on the next segment and then just go on from there. But you've got a pretty good handle on what the negativity is and what Burns says the negativity is. All you have to do is to change those thoughts and feelings and you'll be a lot happier person. But I still say I would want to know what made you get there to begin with. So I'll close it off here and we'll finish this segment next time. Please join me then.